Sup shooters, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to SP Reviews, where today we're going to be checking out a track from an acts named Levi Lee titled Outlaw. And if we switch over to here, we have the track on Spotify here. We're going to listen through this track from start till finish. We're going to hear what we think. Let's go. Oh, could have been. Okay. Okay, let's just stop. Just stop for a moment to appreciate how quickly we're going to this main theme. Engaging string section to start off with the guitars and like a banjo, another plucked instrument in there, and then we have the swoosh in there on the drums, and then nice and punchy and sidechained in the mix.
Shotgunning on the run, lightning strikes everyone. Telltale signs, I've got the scars. Run from the men with 10 stars. Poster with the...
And the leveling is actually quite good as well. I appreciate the balance of the vocals with the drums and the guitars and all the other instruments here. And I know we had stuff fade out for a bit, but coming back in, it's consistent.
No one sleeps until I'm dead. All the lawmen taking names. Say a bullet like I'm Jesse James. We're outlaws from the southern land. You can try to fight us if you can. We're southern boys. We don't give a damn. Got flags flying on our land. We're outlaws.
It's actually a banger. Like, I know I'm interrupting it a lot, but I'm just kind of staggered by it. This is my first impression of what Levi Lee is doing, and they've got a few tracks, you know, Outlaw, Amen, and Stagger In. But it's a really great first impression, and it sounds really, like it's got a lot of promise.
Shooting out the drive like a loaded gun through mud holes and dirt trails. Oh God, these outlaws never fail. Sharp spurs and long black coats, six.
And it's so solid. Like, it sounds like something I could hear on the radio. Like, I see a lot of this kind of music from the mid-2000s. It's got a warmth to it. I think part of that is coming through from just the acoustic or analog instruments that are being played here. Some of those bits with the sub bass are hitting really hard. Like, that is a really thumping kick.
Shots, that's all she wrote. Won't lock my hands in metal chains. Find me hunting on open plains. One more notch on the leather belt. I play the cards as they are dealt. Pray things right and God forbid that I'm not way out in the sticks. We're outlaws from the southern land. You can try to fight us if you can. We're southern boys. We don't give a damn. Got flags flying on our land. We're outlaws on the run, shooting out the drive like a loaded gun through mud holes and dirt trails. Oh God, these outlaws never fail.
Okay, so we've got that kind of redneck, outlaw, kind of southern kind of feel to it. That swagger, that's great. You know, you get that sort of don't F with me kind of vibe from it. You know, it's an interesting sort of aesthetic. I'm wondering what he's doing with his voice in this mix, because he's got a great vocal texture there. It's coming through really nicely in the mix, actually. He's, whether it's the double-tracked parts we have in the chorus, or in parts of the bridge, or we just have him in the middle for the center for the verses and interlude, you know. It matters, you know, it's just the small things. It's an interesting mixture of how do I want to describe the drums? It's got some kind of trap and some kind of trappish kind of hi-hat stuff, some stuff from like, there's like an infusion of country and rock and some hip-hop elements here. And I like the fact that we've managed to put them all together into something that is sort of palatable. Taking the girl from the train, it's kind of wild, eh? You know? I guess that's what you do when you're an outlaw, right? great. You know, it's a well written song. It makes sense when you consider the genre that it's placed in, but its other influences also matter. And the guy's got that's got a nice voice. But this is effectively the conclusion of my review of Outlaw by Levi Lee. What do I think the song is about? I think we've already established what the song is about. You know, that aesthetic of being like that southern outlaw, you know, going around robbing trains and stuff like that, you know, whiskey and all that kind of good stuff. I don't know the word for it. Like, I want to say he's got his posse or something like that. I don't know if that's quite the right word for it. There's a word for it anyways. It kind of reminds like cowboys and that kind of stuff, you know. It's something I've kind of always been inherently fascinated in. Like, I live in New Zealand and we don't really have it. We actually have a surprisingly, it's an okay country scene, but it's obviously nothing like the States, and that's totally fine. But, you know, the story came through well. It makes sense when you consider the influences and the style of music. It would be kind of weird if we went too far thematically from that. The vocals, Levi Lee sung some really nice melodies in here. You know, his vocal techniques sounded solid. He sounded comfortable within his range. Little bits of ornamentation here, some interesting dips and rises there that were at the end of those like chorus hook tails there, those melodies. It was fun to listen to Levi sing and to hear his story that he's telling. I haven't got any real complaints about it. I like the fact that we did vary between the double track vocals on the side and the single ones. And I also like the filtering that we did in some of the end bridge and sort of interlude sections. It's great. We clearly understand how we need to be breaking the song up into different sort of tones and textures and like bits of filtering and stuff to keep it interesting and engaging for a listener. We can't really rely on just one sound anymore in a lot of situations, especially when it's your first impression. Like, if you're comfortable, then you can probably get away with doing it a bit more sort of like streamlined, but like you've got to keep it refreshing when someone's hearing you for the first time so they know what you're capable of. But yeah, the vocals were great, and they matched the tone of the lyrics and the style of music we're making. I mean, the structure of the track with this motif, we had 3 or 4 chord progressions here. There was range between like the verses. There's diversity, should I say, between the verses and the choruses and stuff like that. I liked the way we roll with some power chords or something like that. We had some interesting arpeggios on those banjo and guitar parts, though. And it was nice to have that banjo texture, actually. It kind of, I could have imagined this being just as much of like just a traditional rock piece as like a country rock kind of vibe. And that's fine, you know. Sometimes that one instrument can kind of make it a bit more like it. We had some cool drum fills to seg between the sections of the track. We had repeated vocal melodies within the choruses, and a little bit of change and variety in those verses. But ultimately, I think we understood the kind of track that we were wanting to make here, especially at 3 minutes 11. There was no filler in it. I don't really think you needed a solo or something like that in a track like this, although, to be fair, to talk about the performance and the arrangement and stuff like that, I think there's probably room for like some extra, maybe like an extra little lead bit. But at the same time, you could have put like a harmonica thing in or something like that, although, to be fair, that may have been a little bit too sort of cheesy, or I'm not sure. Obviously, that's not what Levi wanted because we didn't have it in here, and I'm not going to tell him to write how to write his music. But real talk, though, I think that there was no filler within this track. The instrumental performances on the drums and the guitars and the bass and the banjo and everything else were exactly what they needed. There was a consistency with the overall loudness of it, although that came down to more of a production thing than anything else. You know, the vocals were the focus in this track and this arrangement, but like when we did have those instrumental parts, they mattered. And especially with the intro, how it came with like 2 at a time, you know, layering on, slathering on those ingredients, and just to make the mix really sparkle. And then of course you had the verse come in, and then boom, you're ready to go. And it was nice just to have a little pristine outro at the end just to finish it off. And when we're done, I mean, the production, recording, mixing, and mastering was splendid. The actual quality of the vocal recording was really good. What else? The quality of the vocal recording was good. The EQing of the various elements of the track were well done. The effects changed on the instruments were interesting. I'd like to sort of see the drums, how they were done, whether they were, because there's all sorts of ways you can record drums nowadays. It'd be cool to see how they got that to sound good, because often it's difficult to tell again how they did the drums. The stereo padding of the instruments was great, nice and wide, and everything was notched reasonably well in the frequency spectrum. The compression limiting How do I feel about that? The compression and limiting was an interesting situation because it sounded like we were pushing some of those instruments a little bit. There was a little bit of fizz in some of those kicks there, the bass response. It sounded like we were peaking the limiter a little bit. And I'm not upset about that because it wasn't like it was an obvious thing, but I know we were pushing that, at least from a compressor perspective, maybe on the individual channels, if not the master bus. But and that said, it was nice and loud without pumping or anything like that. It's a delicate balancing act, and I think we got it right. But I'm glad that we got it right, because if we'd pushed that kick or anything any further than that, could have been a bit rough. And it's testament to Levi Lee's abilities and perception and quality that we didn't have that occur. Kudos to everyone involved in this track, Outlaw, and I'm hoping that they had that they're proud of the track they've made, I suppose. Because this is my review of Outlaw by Levi Lee. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go check out Levi Lee's various social medias and their Spotify page, and stay cool and stay safe. Please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as you need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world, and I will catch you in the next review. Spartans up.